everyone, welcome. My name is Ashli Komaryk from Komaryk Communications and Beyond the Wine, where we help wineries go beyond the wine to create raving fans of every visitor to their winery. Now today, I have the great pleasure and privilege to be joined by the lead sommelier of Mission Hill Family Estate Winery, Bram Bolwijn. Bram is originally from the Netherlands, and he is here in bringing a global perspective and knowledge and experience and expertise to the Okanagan wine scene. Bram, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me here today. It's actually an honor. I love communicating about wine and talking about all these different aspects of our industry.
We have that in common. It's my favorite subject too. So we're talking today about Petulant Pairings, and it's a series that I've started. It's a blog series, a vlog series, and the idea behind Petulant Pairings is that they're not proper pairings. They're not those pairings that follow the rules. They break the rules, they push the limits. And the reason we want to talk about Petulant Pairings is because we want people to feel adventurous when they are confronting a wine choice, when they are putting wine together with their food to make a memorable meal, a memorable experience, to not feel like they need to be constrained and constricted by rules, but just go out on a limb and try something different and have fun with wine. So yeah, and I know that you're an adventurer, and so I wanted to invite you to talk to us a little bit about what pairings you've experienced or created that you would define as petulant, a little bit naughty.
Nice. I like that. I like that. Yeah, there's so many different pairings in the world of wine, and especially if we think about all the different aspects. And sometimes we get so wired into rules and books that we might read or articles that we read, and we're like, okay, well, that must be the rule of thumb to pair this always with the same thing. And I think this came up before, where often people think white wine belongs to fish and red wine belongs to meat, but there's so much more to it. Actually, if we break it down, the sauce could make or break the dish. How we cooked it. For example, did we have a chicken on a barbecue, or did we put them in the steamer? That changed everything from the texture to the flavor. So every different aspect is an interesting aspect to the whole pairing. And often pairings, we want to combine them. And the best way of looking at it is to highlight and to complement each other. It's not to make one better than the other. No, it's actually to complement one and another. The best expression I've heard is food and wine pairing is just like a marriage. They don't have to be the same. As long as they work and complement one another, it's great. We're making it, yes.
That sounds like a good formula.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of pairings for today in mind that I would love to share. And some pairings, they are opposite pairings. Opposite pairings means that they actually have nothing in comparison to one another. I meet sometimes guests and they expect, well, if you have cherry flavors or aromas in your wine, that's also what you should have in your food. If you have Granny Smith or gooseberries, that's also what you should have over there. No, it doesn't mean that whatever you smell in the wine should be utilized into your food. Sometimes it might be working out in your benefit, and it does work. But otherwise, there's other aspects that we look at. And one of the most important ones for me is the intensity. How strong is the wine? How powerful? And for the food as well. You could overpower a dish very easy, or the wine at times with very big, bold flavors of the food. So you never want to do that. It is easier to adjust your food than to adjust your wine, because the wine, by the time you open up the bottle, it's the wine. It is easier to adjust your sauce or your vegetables or your meat or how you and then nowadays, we also should think about more food and wine pairings that are vegetarian or vegan. I think this is one of the subjects that not every tasting note has to be chicken, has to be salmon, or has to be AAA angus or something like that.
That sounds pretty good though.
Yeah, it does, it does.
But it's true. And when you think about it, when you go to a tasting room, when you're visiting a winery and the person behind the counter is pouring and telling you, you know, this you should eat. And I don't like the word should. I think I have a little bit of petulance in me and in my nature a little bit. I just don't like to be
Yeah.
told what I should do. And yeah, so
Yes.
when someone in maybe in the tasting room, have they even asked to find out that maybe I'm a vegetarian, maybe I'm a vegan, maybe I'm on observing a keto diet. So then they can
Exactly.
suggest, well, this might work well with that. What do you think about that? And, pulling it
Exactly.
out of the guest.
Yeah, no, you're correct. I've got here a beautiful team of 15 sons, and we look and we talk lots about food and wine pairings and different options and different wines. And you first have to understand that the guest in front of you is looking for a wine, and then most likely the guest will be thinking about, when do I drink this wine, with who, and at what moment. You just have to finish that relationship by actually introducing the next momentum, the next moment that their guests are coming around. But what are they going to serve? Well, if you are able to fill in these blanks, it makes it so much easier. That's actually part of hospitality. Is
Absolutely. For me,
one and another.
yes, that's the secret sauce of
That is the
hospitality.
secret sauce.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about your petulant pairing, Bram. What's the first one you're going to share with us today?
I think today I would like to start with one of my favorite pairings at this moment, and that is because we brought here at Mission Hill our Viognier out of the terroir.
Oh, you happen to have that
Right.
bottle right there. Look at
Yes, I do. I was well prepared for this one.
that. That's
So
beautiful. And I know that I've tasted that magnificent Viognier. Tell us, what's the
yeah,
pairing?
the pairing here is, well, first, whenever we look at a pairing, we kind of need to break down the wine quickly and what are the aspects that are standing out. And those are the aspects that I want to utilize later on when I look at my food and wine. So here we have a wine that actually is very aromatic on the nose, very floral, tropical fruit. Combined, when you smell this, often the first thought that goes to people in their mind is, oh, it's going to be sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Wines are a little bit out of fashion. But the interesting part is that this is not sweetness as we would have seen in other wines or back in the day. This is actually what we like to call perceived sweetness. Perceived sweetness, meaning it smells very ripe, just like you smell mango or pineapple. You smell it, you can't taste it yet, but you smell the ripeness. And ripeness actually often translates to sweetness. You smell it, and you're like, wow, and it smells amazing, it smells beautiful, but maybe this is going to be sweet. And then by the time you taste it, it actually disappears, it floats off your palate, and it even leaves that dry, mouth-drying feeling. And you're like, wow, it's not sweet. And this is where it becomes very interesting. So the grapes are grown down south in the Soviets, in a hot climate. We pick actually very late, often after most red grapes are already harvested. So this is an extreme. And then by the time it comes in, we press them, and we'll be standing next to the press tasting, because you don't want to get the bitterness out of the skins, but you do want to get all those beautiful aromatic characters.
Mm-hmm.
Go through fermentation, and then later on we use different vessels, from stainless steel tank to some oak. But the key here for me is concrete egg, the big beautiful amphoras. So concrete, beton, cement, it doesn't have flavor per se, it doesn't have tannins like we see in oak, but it is porous, so it can interact with air. It is very thick, so temperature-wise, it's an interesting vessel. And that shape has some sort of movement going in there. And all of this coming together, it creates a little bit more texture. And in Viognier, as a grape, you might have heard this before, but we talk about a waxy or an oily texture. It's a bit of a descriptor, of course, that is interesting. But if you would think about something that's watery or something that's very chewy or round or heavy,
Mm-hmm.
oily is somewhat in between here. And that texture coats the whole palate, and it leaves, and you're like, wow, that was a beautiful wine. I want to have another sip, because it left my palate. It lingered medium long, not like a big bold Chardonnay that's oaked or a red wine, but it has some length to the palate. And this is where the pairing comes in. I love pairing this with some spicier foods, especially spicy food. And right now my example is going to be like an East Indian dal. It can be so rich in flavors, in spices, in aromas, that red wines with tannins, no, it doesn't do justice to each other. It doesn't complement each other. A Chardonnay or other Pinot Gris or anything that you get too much skin contact from or oak influence, it creates more tannins, more body, but it doesn't refresh the palate. Now, you could look at sweeter wines, but like I said before, sweet wines don't always come up onto the menu for wine connoisseurs, or it depends on the person, of course, but it doesn't come up as first wine that you want to open. So a wine with a perceived, that complete oily texture that it has to it means that you eat something that by the time you're like, okay, this is spicy, yeah, this is rich, this is very present.
So that's an interesting departure, because usually I've heard Gewürztraminer or a Riesling with spicy or Indian foods, but this I love.
Correct.
Little
Correct.
petulant deviation to the Viognier, and the way you described it, it sounds delicious.
No, absolutely. And that Gewürztraminer, I think that's part of the same family as the Viognier, so it's somewhat into the same realms. Riesling, the biggest challenge that you might have is it's got very high acidity, and this is perfect for the wine on its own, but I was not looking here as much for the acidity as much as I'm looking for the perceived sweetness, the aromas, and the body of this wine over here that cleans your palate and you want to start all over again.
Yes, the balance that resets everything, and you're ready for more. How fabulous.
Exactly.
I love it.
Something fun, something different.
Yes, thank you. That's great.
I would say my next pairing on my list would be a very typical pairing that we see back in Europe. So we have a saying, if it grows together, it goes together.
Yes, yes.
It's very old school. Often it works. So it's a very good saying, and it's just proven over and over and over that it has real truth to the saying. So we have Sauternes and Roquefort. And Sauternes and Roquefort, as we know, some of the most well-known and valued sweet wines in the world, especially in Europe. And Roquefort, clearly blue cheese. So often if you meet people that are not big blue cheese connoisseurs, because blue cheese is an extremity of cheese. It's very obvious moldy. It is very obvious that it's got salinity, saltiness to it, and it's very aggressive. You've got the lovers and you've got the haters almost to it. Now here's the fun part. How do you convert those haters to lovers? Well, you need something to completely distract that palate. From one moment to the other moment, it changes. So a couple of years ago, I had guests over here, and this was an older couple, and the lady does not like blue cheese, not at all. Her husband loves blue cheese. He was not even allowed to bring it home, and the reason was it was so strong in smell. The fridge would smell after it, and he would smell after it, and everything else, you name it. So the interesting part is here on an experience, I was serving different items, and I served the blue cheese that's made here in the local area in the Okanagan Valley, and I served it with one of our ice wines. And they're like, no, this is not going to work. And actually, I intrigued the lady. I said, just do me the favor, a small bite. It really doesn't have to be big, because both items, the wine and the cheese, it's not quantity, it's the quality. It is so powerful, and that's sometimes what turns us off. Well, we've had an experience where we took a big bite or a big sip of one or the other, and like, oh no, it's too sweet or it's too aggressive. No, it starts small, as with everything else. Your first coffee was not a double espresso. Your first was a cappuccino with extra milk and extra sugar and anything else you could add to it just to get away from the bitterness. So build these things up. And then by now you might be drinking double espressos after dinner because you enjoy the bitterness. So they tried it, or she tried it, a small bite of the blue cheese, and could see her face, and she's like, no, this is not meant to be for me. And I was like, okay, this is your moment. Take a small sip of the ice wine. And the ice wine, as soon as it hits your palate, it's very thick. The viscosity is very high on it due to the residual sugar, naturally acquired. Like, this is such a beautiful product. It's liquid gold. Here in Canada, we just have more of it almost than anywhere else around the world. Germany and Austria are certainly still producers, but with climate change, things are changing and moving. And as soon as the ice wine hits your palate and spreads out, it clears that salty, aggressive, moldy flavor, and it wipes it clean. And by then you're like, oh, this is sweet. This is very powerful. And that's almost your moment where you're like, okay, I'm ready for another small bite of blue cheese.
Did she have more blue cheese?
She did.
Oh.
And what was funny here is at the end, the gentleman got up and he said, Bram, can I give you a hug? And I said, sure, why? And he's like, I've tried my whole life to bring home blue cheese. And right now I got permission, as long as I would buy a case of ice wine right now, today. So, okay, we'll make it work.
So everyone wins.
Yes. These are those moments where, let's be honest, it's more fun than it is following rules or regulations.
Oh, yeah.
You have to eat this because this is what you should be tasting. No, it's actually something that very small amounts are fun, are something different. And I think that's often the thing that we should be doing if we try to experiment at home with wines, with food, with other things. Often I get questions about decanting or about temperatures. Play around, try.
Yeah, I love it. I think that you improved the quality of their marriage.
Talking about wine pairings. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's something different because then they are intrigued, most likely to show that to their friends. So as soon as they will have the next time at dinner afterwards, the blue cheese might come out, and that's when we open up a bottle of ice wine.
And they've got a story.
Yeah. No full glasses, just that small little bit of liquid gold.
That's right. That's right.
It's never the quantity, it's the quality, it's the story, it's the experience.
Yeah, and they do have an amazing story to share too with their cheese, their blue cheese and ice wine. How fabulous. That's a really great pairing. That's petulant, but in a really good way.
Yes.
I love it.
It's a bit of an opposite way of pairing. Very often you might have seen sweet wines also with other salty aspects such as foie gras. Or otherwise the rule of thumb in the world of wine, we're back to rules, is that your wine needs to be sweeter than your dish, because otherwise it turns your wines actually sour, acidic. And clearly that has lots of value to it. In Canada, with our late harvest and ice wines, it's almost the top of sweet wines in the world. There's a couple of other things that we could connect to it, but we don't have to be afraid that your dish will be too sweet. It's absolutely possible.
Amazing.
To almost utilize it for anything. I think my biggest recommendation would be is focus on the sense of smell when we're tasting it, but go for small quantities.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I like
honey.
Yeah, or maple syrup.
Yeah,
that's
very
Canadian.
Even if we add that in our products, in our teas or in our recipes, a small teaspoon would do the job. It is not the quantity of honey that you might be using. Yeah.
I like that you also mentioned the sense of smell, because we don't need to do anything because we don't need to follow any rules here. Yeah. At the same time, though, using your olfactory sense can add a dimension to the enjoyment and to, the depth of your perception and your receiving of all of those flavors that your food and wine are offering you.
Correct. I think sometimes we're stuck in tasting notes where we are talking about everything we taste. If it really comes down to it, we smell almost everything. The best example I can give is reverse. If we have a really bad cold and our sinuses are stuck, a cup of coffee in the morning tastes bitter and acidic. Well, that's exactly what you taste. So there are no blackberries and vanilla per se that you're tasting. However, we smell through our nose and then through the back of our nose, that olfactory, as you mentioned. Yeah. If we ever have a glass of Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper, you get the bubbles up your nose. That is exactly the way where we smell. So as soon as it hits your palate, that's why we like to slurp in our industry of sommeliers and everything else around wine.
It's polite. It's not considered impolite to slurp in your business.
Correct. Slurping and spitting is normal. Come guess this. Make yourself at home. This is normal over here. With my father in the coffee industry, he used to slurp already around me. There's a sense when you get more air in and your products are actually warming up your beverages onto your tongue, onto your palate. It warms up. So your sense of smell becomes even stronger.
Why don't you give us a little slurp of your Viognier?
I love slurping in front of especially online right now. Yes, yes. A very gentle.
That was a very elegant slurp.
Yes. It's not like mouthwash or anything like that. Actually, right now when I do that, it enhances the body and actually makes my mouth drier, feeling wise, than it did before. You intensify your palate and
Okay.
and then
So we were laughing about that, but it's great that you did that, because then, you know, people that are watching this can see, like, what does he mean by slurping? Like with a Slurpee and a straw? Like, no, 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 it's a technique to introduce air into the mouth cavity where with the wine to, it's about the vaporizing of the flavors, right? So you can taste them on your palate and through the mouth and the retroolfactory and all
right.
in there. Yeah.
There's a whole scientific side to this, but I think the best example is just to try this at home. And it often, especially young red wines, it works very well with. And at one moment, you end up with a mouth that's completely drying and you've got difficulties getting your lips even back together because your gums and your tongue.
Oh, and they stick, your teeth stick to the, yeah.
Oh yes, oh yes. And
Okay,
that's
so
also how sometimes I analyze the wine, how we analyze the palate, how we analyze the different tannins and stuff. So there's a whole scientific side, but in reality, if you're just at home with a glass of wine, try a sip right now without slurping and try another sip and even exaggerate it. Why not? And then see how it
okay. And I am going to issue a challenge now to anyone who's watching this video. In the comment section below, let us know, did you slurp? And how did it work out? How did that slurping go? That's awesome.
What were the reactions of your surrounding guests?
Yes, describe the slurping situation. I love it. So tell us your next pairing. Do you have another petulant pairing for us?
Yes, yes, yes. So I would want to say, the other day I found a very beautiful sparkling Syrah from Road 13 down south.
Wait a second. That's red. A sparkling red, you say?
That is red. Yes. Imagine something like a Lambrusco. So the sparkling Italian wine over here. Now, clearly we can't call it the same because it's a protected area around in Italy. Very interesting. Now, most red wines have tannins. No surprise over here. Tannins are mainly from skins, sometimes pits, sometimes stems that have been kept in contact. There's wines with very low tannins, like Beaujolais and Nouveau, for example. And we have grapes with very thin skins. I often think about a Pinot Noir, potentially a Zweigelt, Barbera. The longer you leave those skins in contact with the must, the juice, the stronger it becomes. So white grapes make mainly white wines. We've got some exceptions. Red grapes, black grapes as we call them, make red wine, rosé, and white wine. It all has to do with the amount of skin contact. So the biggest difference between them is how long do you leave those skins in contact with the must, with the juice. And the longer you let, the more color you extract, the more tannins, but actually the more flavors as well. So with this in mind, is tannins, they combine with your saliva in your palate. And when that happens, it gives them that mouth drying sensation. So there's people that love that and there's people that dislike that. So often people that like big, bold, powerful red wines, in general, I would assume they like dark black coffees, they like pure chocolate, they might like spirits such as whiskey, etc. And potentially they like spicier food as well. Where people that prefer only white, lighter, or aromatic, they are having a more sensitive palate. Meaning that most likely they won't eat spicy food and they would prefer different items, but not per se a whiskey or something. They might like it, let's say a gin tonic if they would have spirits. So there's different forms. It's not the rule, but there's lots of truth to this as soon as you start categorizing different ways of how we taste and what we prefer. So with that in mind, sparkling Syrah in this case, the biggest subject that it doesn't have are these tannins. It has some residual sugar to it as well, low, but it makes them softer. And that's often when we start drinking wines, we like sweeter wines. Back to the cappuccino. The cappuccino had extra sugar because we didn't have the bitterness. So I would say, kids, love candy. Right now, I'm in a time era where if I had to choose right now between candy or cheese, I go for cheese. I prefer savory. I grew up in the Netherlands, so I love black licorice. But black licorice is part of, I'm going to call it the culture. So you do bring things along with you that you grow up with, and that's very normal. Most people here around me, I don't even have to share my black licorice with because they can't stand it. Now, throughout the time, you will see, and that's back to the coffee, you will start drinking your coffee more and more pure black, darker, maybe shorter, less water, more extraction. And now here's the fun aspect. You will change your whole life as long as you keep exploring. But by the time we will go to retirement homes, we might have little drawers around us with candy hidden in it. Why? It's because we might change once again and we love that sweetness. Now, this is not per se for everyone the same, but there's lots of truth to it that I think most guests or people that I would ask right now at this time in their life, they would prefer savory over sweet.
Okay. And so how does that work with the sparkling Syrah?
Correct. Sorry, I drifted off there for a moment.
That's okay. That was really
Most of the
interesting.
time our palates develop. But if we go
Yeah.
back to the Syrah, the sparkling Syrah. So you've got a sparkling red wine. This is very interesting because often red wine, and that's why we like meat, is because of the proteins. There's fat to meat. It combines and makes the wine feel smoother. So now you actually already have a softer, smoother wine. I like to chill the wine a little bit because it's still just like a Pinot Noir. It doesn't have to be cold, but just chill them down because alcohol is volatile. The warmer it gets, the bigger, the bolder, the stronger it gets. So in this case, when it's chilled, it is a little bit more preserved, elegant. It's lighter. It has a beautiful nose on it. Like you still have this berries, but then in the sparkling form, when you taste it, it cleans the palate. That's what most sparkling wines often do, but you don't have the tannins that make it bitter or astringent. So in this case, I would love to pair that. Very old school wise, it's often meats, but like so tapas is if you're sitting outside, you just have the table full with different bites from olives to dates to little rolls with bacon or charcuterie such as speck or Parmesan cheeses. It's just very easy to pair with just because it doesn't have the power of the tannins in here.
Oh, that's fabulous. That is definitely petulant because with tapas or, with a charcuterie, you might think of, a regular red wine or a sparkling white.
Yeah, and then it does work. It does work. It's easier to use with tapas different items. I love utilizing, especially when it's hot outside, rosés. But this is one of those that you can start the evening with, and you don't have to open up the big bold reds straight away because as you build up, bigger, bolder, stronger, there is going to be a moment where you kind of have to change of direction. We like to use sparkling wine sometimes to clear the palate, and you can start all over again. That's a little bit of your safeguard up there. Or you finish the evening with stronger alcohol, whiskeys, cognacs, or potentially you go into the world of sweeter fortified wines.
Right. I love it. I love that. I've made a note of that. Sparkling Syrah. I am going to have to get my hands on that because I adore Lambrusco. And it pairs what grows together, goes together.
Right?
And in that case, the food from Emilia Romagna, where we find Lambrusco, is all of that beautiful, the charcuterie, the salame, culatello, prosciutto, salame. Oh yeah, it's wonderful.
What is interesting in here is meats are often fairly salty, so salt intensifies. So if you have red wines that are very dry, tannic, and you have saltier meats, the salt will intensify sometimes the tannins. So it actually becomes stronger, more powerful. So if you have dark coffees, now this is exactly what you enjoy. But on the moment, you're not ready for bigger tannins, more power. Just shift a little bit. And sometimes a white wine and dried meats work very well, or rosés, or a sparkling red like this. It's just fun. They're fun pairings, and they don't have to be the most expensive bottles of wine either.
How fabulous!
Interesting,
yeah, and fun. I mean, that's That's what we want, right? We want wine to be fun and approachable and not intimidating and not prohibitively priced in order
True,
to,
true,
it might
true,
be a special occasion for that, but, to make it part of our daily lives.
true. What we all eat, we all drink. Almost everyone says, yeah, I like wine. But sometimes the world of wine has that sort of magical touch to it because they might have heard about bottles of wine going for $500,000, or there's all these appellations around the world. Or you hear people just like me giving tasting notes and going on for 5 minutes, and they're like, I don't know what he's talking about, because to me, just like we've made the world of wine so high that we kind of overdone it and almost intimidate people more than invite.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what we want to not do. If you want to take your knowledge to that level, absolutely, that you can,
Correct.
sky's the limit. But we want everyone to be able to feel like they can be
Correct.
comfortable enjoying wine. So, do you have one more pairing that's the most petulant pairing that's going to
I
blow
do.
our
I
minds?
do. I do. I do. Okay. I thought about one, and I would really like to share this. So in my previous experience, I've had some work in Michelin-star restaurants back in Europe. And it's all about the experience. It's all about the pairing. And nothing is quick, fast. The sense of smell is so important that I can give more examples than I could even imagine. That the sense of smell of a dish could actually influence us more than really what we're eating. What we're eating is almost the texture, bitterness, sweetness, salinity, everything else. Sense of smell is so important. And we are very sensitive for presentation. Our eyes and ears are real tasters as well. The red yogurt must be strawberry, and yellow yogurt must be banana. No, but our eyes, they are so easily misled. So this pairing that I want to mention, we did with a sherry. And this was a very interesting sherry. It was actually off dry. And we paired with this a dessert, and that was built out of pistachio ice cream, with on top of that deep fried chicken skin that we would serve in the ice. And then we would have a little spoon with a little jar, and we would have deep fried blue cheese that we would sprinkle over this dish. So you've got something very nutty, deep fried chicken skin and blue cheese, and then a very funky off-dry sherry. You would think, well, this is funky wine. I don't think I would normally buy this bottle or a glass by myself. And this dish, I would not be able to cook this for my friends because I don't think that sounds amazing. The funky dish and the funky wine, two funky partners combining into a marriage, just like a battery. You've got your plus and your minus, and that's where you go.
That
Very
is
interesting.
incredible.
It is something that when I served it and I had to explain this to guests, they would give me the weirdest looks. And I'm like, yeah, try it. Honestly, try it. And before I knew it, they would call me to the table and they say, is there any chance we can do the same dish all over again? I don't mind what it costs. We just want to do it once again. And
Wow.
it's just fun. That is fun pairing, and it has nothing to do with following rules or other things. It is just looking for the extremities and actually exploring tasting. And even if someone doesn't like it, that's okay. Please be okay with not
Oh,
liking
sure.
something, because not
Yeah.
everyone is extreme pairings. But being able to try it that far, that's fun. And
Ah,
I've
what an
really fell in love with
adventure.
both products. Yeah, sherry's been, I would almost say, not that highly looked after nowadays anymore in the world of wine. And it's almost too bad. They're beautiful products. So I actually came in touch with my head sommelier at the time, a gentleman that was very, very knowledgeable, but he loved sherry so much. He's been there several times. And the amount of different sherries that are on the market, their age, the production, and how they express themselves. Wow. You get sometimes, I'm excited by other people that are so excited about something. And he was certainly for me one of those examples where I was focusing on the rest of the world of wine. And sherry was not just that high on my list. And by his excitement, it intrigued me to taste, learn, explore. and it grew. We have here within the valley of the Okanagan, we have another wine that I came across. It's from Cedar Creek. It's called the M, and it's a Madeira style. So Madeira style, it's actually fortified. It is cooked. It has almost everything that a normal still white wine wouldn't have. But it's very interesting. On the nose and the palate, I would describe it as extremely funky, nutty, and that oxidization gives you sort of a dried fruit character, such as dried apples, that sort of cidery aspect of it, raisiny aspect. Very funky, and I would love to do something similar to this pairing. Otherwise, aged cheeses and nuts, sweet pecans or just normal walnuts, they would complement this wine very well. The interesting part of a wine like that, it's so expressive, it's so powerful that you have to find a dish that has the same intensity, has the same power to balance that.
Right, to stand up to that. I'm still thinking about chicken skin on my pistachio ice cream. So are you able to push those limits at Mission Hill? Because you've got an award-winning restaurant. Congratulations, by the way, in the news this week. It was one of the top restaurants.
Thank you.
I forget what was the actual.
Well, there's lots of things.
The actual award. It was the top one of the.
So it's one of the top 20 restaurants. So they're actually still in the voting system as of right now. So it's still going on. It's part of the competition, but there has been already some announcements about it. So I think I should release all the information as soon as I receive it.
Okay.
But the restaurant is actually been several times into the media attention. And it's such a beautiful location. The views, the looks, the touch, and the food that we're serving. So over here, we're working with local farmers, staff out there to do weeding, to do planting. So we have a real sense of location. Like wine, we call terroir. But for food, we can have exactly the same thing. The Okanagan Valley is a valley that was very well established by lots of farmers and people that are having cherries to peaches to apples, nut farms that we have over here, cheese that's being produced in our own cooking. So the sense of location is just as important as this of wine for farmers to work in nature, and Mother Nature gives so much. So we're working with local foragers, and one of them is a close friend of mine, and I love going out with him into the mountains, look for mushrooms, look for different plants that grow at different times throughout the year. And all of these products we bring back, and he actually sells it here to the restaurant. It's amazing that there are delicacies that we have here in Canada that around the world are looked after, from pine mushrooms, matsutake, to lobster mushrooms. I've never even seen anywhere else in the world. Chanterelles, morels, you name it. There's so much out here. It's unbelievable. Wild asparagus. So much going on,
And are you involved in the menu development and the pairings and
so
pushing the limits?
What we do is there's not a one moment where everything is decided upon. Actually, we have, I'm going to call them different panels. So we have the winemakers, we've got me, chefs, we've got everyone else coming together and sharing their different opinions, because that's so important in our world of wine making even, and food and wine pairing. Let's go around the table and let's hear everyone's thought and opinion. And like with everything, even around your own dinner table, you might have people that are really in favor of one dish, but later on they would love to have another wine with it. So after what we do is we will have several different bottles of wine open, and then we look at the pairing. But what is important, so you have horizontal pairings and you've got vertical pairings. What is important is that as of right now with COVID, we have more of a set menu. So if you have a set menu, you want to build up an intensity from wine. So let's say you might start with a Viognier. Your next dish would be a very Pinot Noir. And then after that, we drink a bottle of Compendium that is based upon Cabernet Sauvignon. This pairing will driven wines such as Compendium and then go back to Viognier. You won't do justice to this wine. So what's important is within the pairing, you complement the food and the wine. And within the pairing, as of different courses, you build up in intensity while complementing the courses, if that makes sense. Oh, I think you froze for a moment.
Yeah, you know what? We're having some.
You're on mute.
Okay, and we're having some network issues. So you know what? I want to thank you, and I'd love to schedule another call if you're willing to talk more about pairings and pushing the limits and being petulant in the world of wine. I would love to talk to you even more about all of this, Bram.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if anyone has any questions, I love communicating and talking and interacting with anyone about anything, right? We say this so often, but there are no stupid questions. And especially in the world of wine, I think what we should realize is the more you learn, the less you know. There's almost no way to always know everything. And actually that something works for everyone. It's just not the way it works. So you can read as many books and as many articles, but there's often that own sense of experience that you need to discover before you fall in love with something. And then just as much as pistachio ice cream, deep fried chicken skin and blue cheese on top of it, it's not on normal days. No, I understand.
No.
But if you try something extreme and pair with it, and if you have an old bottle of wine at home, please don't throw it out or cook straight away with it. Actually, give it a moment. Give it a sense of smell. Give it a taste. And even if it's oxidized and funky, you're like, yeah, I'm not too sure with it. Look at a food and wine pairing and maybe find a dish like a date pie for dessert with an older bottle of ice wine and enhance those characters that maybe actually make you think that the wine is turned bad or something. Maybe utilize them in your food and wine pairing and maybe complement that.
Right.
And actually, you get that sort of crazy, funky moment.
Have a funky moment. I love it. So push the limits, be adventuresome. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, Bram, to talk about being funky, how can they reach you? Where can they write to you?
Anyone is able to email me. Potentially, we can put it up later on or in your article. Always email me, and it's my first letter and my last name, B. Bolwijn, BBOLWIJN @missionhillwinery.com.
Wonderful.
Feel free to reach out with any wines or just in general about anything else. That's all good. That's part of our industry.
Thank you so much, Bram. And I really appreciate your time today. I know you're very busy with the season. And are you going to show us a little bit of Mission Hill?
I will just
amazing.
show you the view.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's just stunning.
The sun. Isn't that beautiful?
That is gorgeous. And that's what you look at from your restaurant, isn't it?
Yes, that is correct.
Oh, so I highly recommend a visit to Mission Hill Winery to anybody watching this film. Bram, thank you again very much. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.